Today, we have another Turning the Table episode where we get asked the questions. The topic will be Roger's new book, Reflections on Cinematography. Asking the questions will be cinematographer Roberto Schaefer. His credits include Monsters Ball, Finding Neverland, and Quantum of Solace. Roberto, thank you for doing this.
Hey.
We're really pleased. If we have to be grilled by someone, let it be you.
Yeah.
I'm honored, believe me. This is wonderful. Wonderful.
So I've been combing through the book for days. It's truly an amazing tome. Besides all the technical facts, which I don't understand how you remember all that stuff. And I want to know, did you keep journals? Do you have diaries while you were shooting, while you were doing all this?
Who has the time for that?
No, I have none. I mean, it's all done off memory, so I think it's probably not everything is strictly accurate, but who knows? But for the films, most of the scenes and the direct little discussions of lighting I've done have usually come from drawn illustrations, if not lighting diagrams, So I had those references to go to. But I have a pretty good memory, really. So most of it is by memory, yeah.
I would say you have an excellent memory. So, your recollections are really so clear and they're so detailed from your childhood, from your art and film schools, your documentary travels around the world, which I'm totally envious of because I did a lot of documentary work, but not nearly as much as you have there.
Well, it's not, I didn't do, yeah. I mean, I didn't really do that much documentary work. I mean, and the documentaries, I kind of, be honest, I don't think are that very good, but it was a big life experience for me. And so, I remember so many details of those experiences. I remember so many little things I didn't write in the book,
Wow, even more. Because I know I've done a lot of documentaries around the world. And I find that I think that's what I'm reading into yours is that the documentary experience, being there mostly in natural light with real people in real situations where you have to get the right shot at the time because it's nothing you're going to restage and do again to tell the story.
And I mean, I just did a workshop called Framing the Narrative. And to me, that's what telling the story with the image, the way you do. And you talk about how you use lighting and framing to tell your stories. So one of the things that stuck out was the African proverb that you quoted on page 74. The eye never forgets what the heart has seen. And I'm wondering if it's almost the reverse of that too, that the heart never forgets what the eye has seen.
I think that's really true. Yeah. I mean, I love that proverb. As I say, I have really, really strong memories of all those experiences because where I was from and growing up, the first time I went abroad was for a weekend in Paris with a girlfriend, and I must have been 20 something at that time. I hadn't been abroad before that. I didn't really go abroad after that until I went to Switzerland on a film when I was at the National Film School. And so the documentary work was really my experience of life and of traveling and of different cultures and different people, meeting different people. So, yeah, they're very they're really wonderful for the most part. They're wonderful memories. I mean, I say not always sort of fantastic situations to be in, but the memories are really there. Yeah.
And special situations. I mean, being in the Sudan in that time, I was in Sudan at one time. It's experiencing this. It really informs you how you then create later and take into the movies, the fictions that you work.
Yeah, but it's sort of the experiences, yourself. You're going with a couple of other people to shoot a documentary, and you're actually living with your subjects for, may only be a few weeks or whatever, but it's different than being a tourist, I mean, your whole role to be there is to try and understand what's around you and understand the people you're filming. And that's very different than being a tourist. You're accepted, you're looked at in a different way than if you were a tourist. And no tourist would ever have gone to Eritrea and spent time with the freedom fighters, the guerrillas in Eritrea. I mean,
not willingly.
Well, it wouldn't have happened. Very few people from outside of the country got to go in there, journalists or not,
Yeah, it's very, very amazing. I had some similar experiences there. You mentioned your philosophy on page 251, The Illusion of Life, chapter 23. That naturalism isn't the same as realism.
The goal is to use natural looking light as a form of expression. And to me, that was really telling me so much, because you also do say that you're not recreating the natural light. You're using the natural light as an impression to then create what works for you that seems natural in the situations. And I think that's one of the things that's most discussed and spoken and admired about your work, is that most everything feels so naturally lit that it's not lit. It is natural. Obviously, there are things like, we cut to Blade Runner 2049, and there's a lot of unnatural lighting in there. Gorgeous work, artistic, but that's informed by the story. So it is natural to the story, if I can take it there.
Yeah, you're also trying to make that feel natural. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I just think of G.W. Pabst, because I was reading a historic novel about G.W. Pabst, and you think about the lighting in something like Pandora's Box. I mean, partly German expressionist lighting, and obviously it's got had a lot of influences on other people's work. You think of films like The Third Man, or the same kind of thing. Well, the lighting is very stylized. If you looked at it you look at a single frame of The Third Man, and you wouldn't say that's realistic lighting, but within the context of the story, you're watching it, you're totally absorbed within that world that's being created by the director and the cinematographer and all the other people working on the film. And that's the trick, isn't it? I do feel today is a little bit of a, because we can shoot in natural light and what actually exists, that's what people tend to do. And yeah, that's very nice. It's very comfortable. It's easy. It's cost effective. But that's not necessarily getting the most out of the opportunities you have in making a film and creating a world that reflects a story.
Yeah, I mean, completely. It's documentary in a sense. It's not imparting a point of view. And you do say that a film is about, page 383, you said about 1917, you're speaking here. A film is about story and character, not lighting or fancy camera work.
And I agree, but your lighting, your camera placement, and your framing choices are also story and character, because each is contributing to and enhancing both the story and the character. So, as you say, that just walking in because you can shoot in the available light doesn't mean that you're telling the story or enhancing the character.
Right, right.
And 1917 felt completely natural, completely, and I know you described you shoot a lot, was in daylight and you waited for the cloud covers and all of that. And I've heard stories from Michael Lerman about all of that with the weights. Michael Lerman, the assistant director on that, who I've worked with on 6-7 pictures. It's, and for production, I can see them tearing their hairs out, but it's what's necessary to tell the story the way it needs to be told.
Yeah, Yeah. Actually, production were pretty good about it, actually. I remember in the pre-production meetings, though, saying, what are we going to do if we get the weather that they had in England the year before, which was like a month of sun without a single cloud? And of course, in the production meeting, people said, well, that's not the right question to ask because we've got no answer. I mean, I still don't know what they'd have done. And the first day of the shoot, as James knows full well, we were sitting around and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. But the next day it started clouding up. So we actually managed to shoot 2 days' work and we were still okay. But it was tricky. Yeah, it was tricky. Yeah.
And knowing Michael, I guess that's why he smokes so much and drinks so much, because he did deal with all of that.
Right. But so was everybody else, really.
Yeah.
And then Sam said to me one time, Roger, I don't know why you're getting so stressed out. It's not your responsibility. And I said, well, why is Michael asking me every half an hour if I'm ready to shoot when there's no clouds? And why is everybody looking at me all the time? Not my responsibility, sure.
Yeah, that's a between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, when you try and offload the responsibility by sort of asking the gaffer, like John Higgins Biggles on that film. I said, well, you tell me when the clouds are coming, Biggles, thinking that would offload some responsibility. But no, he wasn't having any of that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's
funny.
It's a crazy one. I mean, I've shot in England, in London, in changing lighting conditions every 10 minutes in Hyde Park. And Biggles was my gaffer.
Oh, right.
Biggles, how are we going to deal with this? Because now suddenly it's black sky and it's going to start to rain.
Yeah.
So get up the rags and do the covers and do some additional lighting to help out. But it's I always look to the gaffer.
Yeah, it's just a terrible responsibility. And then you get, I tell a little bit about a film I shot in Kenya called Kitchen Toto. And films are sort of like scheduled when they've got actors availability and the budget comes in and it all comes together. And we went to shoot in northwest Kenya, where the last bit of rainforest is in the country, north of Lake Victoria. And we got the wrong time of the year, because the mornings would be bright sunlight. It would be absolutely wonderful bright sunlight, which you needed where we were shooting. We were shooting in a plantation, a European old plantation house in the middle of the jungle. So when it was really dark or late in the day or early, there was very little light because the trees are so high, you would get very little light. So we would shoot exteriors all morning, but by 11:30 in the morning, the clouds built up, these huge thunderclouds. And literally, by the time we broke for lunch, there would be hailstorms. I mean, I remember, I wrote about it in the book, at one point, everybody's in the lunch tent, and the whole tent is taking off. So everybody's holding onto the guy ropes, trying to keep the tent down, and they all went off the ground. I can remember like 9 people on a guy rope actually going into the sky. I mean, it was that kind of windy. And then in the afternoon, it's just no way it was going to match. But sometimes production would say, well, we've got to shoot. So you've done the morning shot in absolutely blinding sunlight with that sort of contrast. And these are obviously the days shooting film, so you couldn't really manipulate it as much as we can today. But then in the afternoon, you're literally wide open on the lens and the sky is black and you can't see into the forest. You could hardly see anybody standing on the lawn. It's kind of extraordinary what your situations you're put in sometimes.
So what did you do?
I said, well, I'll shoot it. If I have to shoot it, I have to shoot it. But I said, I don't think it's going to be usable. And it wasn't until, because everybody then was watching VHS tapes, right, for dailies 3 days later on a really bad little TV set. I remember one producer saying, well, that looks all right. We get away with that. But when they came back to London and watched it on a screen, it was totally unusable.
And this is before DI, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah.
Hazeltine three light printing.
Yeah, we were glad, a few months ago, we actually did first time ever, we did a digital transfer of Kitchen Toto. The film was called A Kitchen Toto, and it actually doesn't look too bad now with the DI transfer. But they never used any of this really extreme footage. I mean, at one time, there was literally an inch of ice on the jungle floor because the hail had been so intense. And this is in like the middle, right on the equator, virtually. Yeah. It's weather. Cinematographer's job.
Yeah, there's no
way, and you have to deal with it. I know I always try to see with the AD, at least in planning, to shoot the direction, like you said, so it's backlit, right? Morning, afternoon locations, but the weather doesn't always agree with that. Wow, that's an extreme example.
And then you want to build in a set somewhere that you can run to. And, we had that on 1984. We were shooting on Salisbury Plain. And, it's open to the weather from the west down there. It's like where I was brought up in Devon. It's very changeable. And so we had a set constructed in a barn quite nearby so that we could run to weather cover. Luckily, we didn't have to use it because actually it wouldn't have made any difference because the actors weren't available anyway. They're in a block anyway, so
and also those barns tend to have really noisy roofs.
And if it had been raining, we couldn't have shot there anyway. So you try, but sometimes it's just you just got to go for luck, really, hope. Haven't you?
Yeah, luck is a big word.
Yeah.
So going to the book directly, I read through everything, and I really had a hard time stopping, putting it down, because even going through all the details and all the technical things that you talk about and the way you shot things and the lighting that you used, I mean, totally fascinating. And anybody who's listening to this, if they haven't bought the book or if they don't plan on buying it, you have to buy it because there's no way you can get to the depth of what Roger has done without reading the details because it's phenomenal. And the amount of details, it's film school right there.
Wow, thank you.
Amazing.
I did try not to make it too technical. I mean, I tried to make the techniques I used and the equipment I used, tried to make it fairly understandable to somebody that's not really that conversed with the technology,
And you also indicated why you made that choice, because a lot of times you make a choice because you have to turn something over quickly or because you're on a big hill or something.
Yeah.
All of those other things come into the choice of lighting.
Yeah, and when I say technical, I mean just specifics that you talk about or you write about in how you shot something or the lights that you chose or the schematic of the plot. But it's all written in very layman's terms in a sense, a few technical names of lamps. But the things like where you just said, James, about the choices that you have to make there, things like the ones, where was it, where you shot?
You had like a half a mile or a mile from a hill to where the set was going to be this whole big open place. And you chose the Musco light for one, and then another time you had a similar type of thing, but the Musco didn't make sense because there was no place to park it. So you did a bank of, I was amazed. It was 150 18Ks or something.
I was probably 60 odd, but not quite that much. But
almost 60.
It grows
60 odd. It was like, but that was on True Grit, and it was a night scene, and it was supposed to be snowing or coming up to snow, and we had so many shots to shoot in so few nights. I mean, it was a tough old schedule. So I figured I really got to light for what was two different screen directions at the same time. So I put up more lights than I would for a single scene. And not completely, but more or less we could go from one scene to another at a flick of a switch. And also, because it was the idea it was going to snow, I didn't use Musco lights. It was not only because there was nowhere to put them, but the effect of a Musco light is obviously to look like hard light, like a moonlight. And I didn't want that for True Grit. I wanted something softer. But also the thing was the number of shots, the number of close-ups of faces and people, that I needed a light that was more forgiving. You know what I mean? If you've got a Musco, you've got to know where you're going to be shooting. Do it like on No Country for Old Men. I knew very directly where I could put the Musco, or the two Muscos, and I wanted three, but I only had two. But I knew where it was going to go. I knew what the shots were, and it was kind of restricted in that sense. So I felt that was the light was not only right for the scene because it could be moonlight, but I could sort of deal with it on the coverage. But I couldn't have done that on True Grit. It was too much coverage, and I wanted it a more forgiving light on the characters.
That's why it helps too sometimes when you know what the coverage is going to be ahead of time.
Yeah.
And you can sort of plan for it.
Yeah. I mean, on both, I walked through the shots on location with Joel and Ethan Coen. So I knew exactly, and I knew the limitations, and I knew what they expected of it. So, again, in the end, it's the other thing about the No Country for Old Men scene, well, I had the Musco lights up there because also in a practical sense, if I'd have done it with a rig, I could have put a scaffold up. I mean, Muscos are 100 foot high. So if I'd have done a scaffold, I could have done it. I could have put an array of 12K HMIs at that time anyway on top of it to create a sort of fairly hard source of light equivalent to the how many Musco lights it is? It's like it's 90 odd K, so it's 180 K. So that's quite a few single lamps I'd have had to put up. But then we were shooting day exteriors as well. So you would have been so restricted had putting the rig up and taking it down. So it was just too much trouble. So the Musco, you could come in the day before, the day before, so I could do a pre-light, and then it could go out actually the morning after the night shoot. So even before we saw dailies, which was a bit frightening, but that's what we did, again, expense as well,
But it's an important point also that you don't light it the best way that you could, given if you didn't. If you were only thinking about that one shot, there's so much else that comes into it. And sometimes you light it in a way that maybe isn't as wonderful as you might want it to be.
Well, it's
but
controllable,
it works.
yeah. I mean, because originally I had talked with Chris Napolitano, the gaffer, about putting a scaffold rig up and having a lot of lights that we could then fan out and be actually hands-on, whereas a Musco, all the lights they're tiers on a remote control, so it's not, and they're par lights, so they're not quite as nice as a large Fresnel. So I mean, they have the punch when they're on spot, but I was trying to get a flood of light. So so you have to take all the things and balance them out, the practicalities, the kind of rigging possibilities, and then what you actually want it to look like.
So it's the right tool for the job.
Yeah.
It fits what the situation is.
The situation.
And hopefully, and you mentioned that you walked through it with Joel and Ethan before. So, I mean, that's a really important thing is planning, prep, knowing in the locations, what the shots that they're going to want to have. And I know you talked somewhat about storyboarding or plot, shot plots to know. Have you ever worked with a director? And I think you mentioned, no names, but you mentioned a director, or that there are directors who just don't care about that, and they just want to show up and have you decide what to shoot, but that they don't have anything, and they don't want to talk about it beforehand.
No, I mean, which is fine sometimes. I mean, directly on Jarhead, Sam and I talked about not talking about it until we rehearsed. So I basically shot it handheld like a documentary, but instead of it being a true documentary, after the first take, I would shoot the whole scene handheld, and much like César Chalot works with Fernando. I mean, then you figure the next take how you want to adapt the camera move or the positioning for the scene that's evolving in front of you. But that's a fine way of working. But I did briefly work with a director whose name I won't mention on a project, which also a project I won't mention. But the director wanted to shoot everything on a Steadicam and create the shots on the day with a Steadicam, find the shots. And I just couldn't work like that. And I said, basically, I'm not sure what I'm doing. I have to bounce a lot of lights to give you the opportunity to shoot in every direction.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel satisfying,
Yeah. And
so I left.
Yeah, I understand that. Understand that quite well. So on Sid and Nancy, you mentioned that you regret lighting a scene in a particular way. Yeah. What was that about?
I've always had this thing, and especially back then, that when I get nervous or insecure, I overlight. I get tired, I overexpose. But we'd shot Sid and Nancy, we shot in England, then we come to America. We shot in New York, and we shot in the Chelsea Hotel, and we shot in the corridors and everything. And I was working with, first time I was working with Billy O'Leary, has been my gaffer on many, many films since, but he was a practical electrician back then. And we set up all these little practical lights to shoot in the Chelsea Hotel. There was no conventional film lights. We just put little fluorescent strips or tiny little bulbs.
And it also was very much a run and gun.
Yeah, it was a run and gun shoot.
Not storyboarded or...
But then to do the interiors of the room, which one scene it had to catch fire and all the rest. We had a set on stage in somewhere on Vine Street in LA, a little studio in LA. I can't remember where it was now. And we had this little set to do the one particular scene where the Sid and Nancy are talking to the drug dealer in the room. And I thought, well, I got these three people in this room facing each other. It's this little box set with no windows. At that point in the thing, there was no windows, or none I could use. And I just overthought it. Instead of just kind of like using the practicals and letting one of the characters, i.e. the drug dealer, go a little bit more into shadow, I started putting lights up on the rail above the set, which is something I rarely, rarely do unless it's for a particular effect. And I started lighting with specific sources for the actors. And I did that on one scene and then realized that it was a big mistake. I'd done what I don't normally do. I just got kind of scared. So for the end of Sid and Nancy, where they get into a fight and, it's all going on, I'd gone much more back to the sense of using the practicals. And there were film lights, but I was using them to augment the practical sources in a much more naturalistic way. So, I've always regretted that. There's a couple of other scenes on Sid and Nancy. I did the same thing as well. There was one in England we did in a swanky apartment in Maida Vale, but we were on the sort of third floor, I think. I couldn't afford any lifts to bring light in the windows and stuff, so I started augmenting the daylight I used to use these kind of like agricultural bulbs. They were called, they're like grow lights, and I'd put them above the window to augment the daylight, and I thought it was overlit. I didn't need to do that. I could have left it more shadowy than I did. But, again, we were shooting in every direction and handheld and kind of making up as we went along. So I kind of, regret doing it.
Has that kind of thing happened to you again since then? That you're cognizant of?
Not really so much since then. I mean, maybe there's once or twice, but no, I don't think so. Sometimes been accused of underlighting rather more than overlighting.
Well, you also kind of know to check yourself when you're tired.
Yes, or actually Andy Harris, who was my assistant for many, many years, would say, "Are you sure?" Or the gaffer Billy O'Leary or something.
Or I would.
Or James would say, "Are you sure? Do you need that?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to have, it's good to have
people you trust.
People you trust.
Yeah.
And I've always looked up to, wanted to have gaffers who had more experience than I did.
Yeah.
To, rely on their opinions too.
Yeah. But of course, now you've got a monitor. I mean, we've had a monitor for many, many years, so that's a very different thing. When you were at the end of a 14-hour day and you were trying to judge the balance in a shot that you were lighting at night on location and getting the hurry up because you had turnaround to start early the next morning, it's kind of easy to overlight or make a decision that you regret later. It's quite easy, isn't it?
Yeah, just to protect, because you don't want a 3 a.m. call from the lab.
Yeah.
It's dark. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
And then I was going to ask you, you've worked multiple times with same directors, several different ones, with Michael Radford, with Sam Menzies. What are the positive things that you get from working with the director multiple, and are there any negatives from that?
It's been really good, actually. With Mike Radford early on, it was wonderful. I was just so flattered he asked me in the first place. We'd done some TV documentary work together, and then we'd been at the same National Film School, but then he asked me to shoot his first film in Scotland, which called Another Time, Another Place. I was kind of blown away. And then that went on, to a couple of other movies, 1984 being one. The downside was only that he had a project after we'd done White Mischief together, and there was no scheduled date for it to start. And I was getting offers from other directors, and we had a bit of a falling out because I'd accepted another job and he was expecting to shoot. And that was really sad. It really kind of hurt because you can't always keep yourself available,
Right.
It's very common.
Yeah. I'd done that with Joel and Ethan for many years. I turned down a lot of work just because I knew they'd been doing another film. And I was glad to do it. I mean, believe me, I loved working with Joel and Ethan. But there comes a point, that I started, for instance, I asked Joel and Ethan about, I'd worked with Sam on a couple of films, Jarhead being the first, which I really, really loved working on. And then he asked me to do Skyfall a few years later. And
after you had done Revolutionary Road.
Yeah, after Revolutionary Road. And I said to Joel and Ethan, I forget what we'd just finished shooting. I said, "Are you going to do anything else soon? Because I've been asked to do this. It's a Bond movie, but it's really interesting. It's not like a Bond movie. And it's with Sam." And they said, "Well, you'd be mad not to do it. We're
not
wait.
Planning to.
Yeah, we're not planning to. We got something, but we'll wait." And of course, schedules changed. The Skyfall went later. I think Joel rang me or something. I talked to him later. He said, yeah, I think he rang me and said, "Look, we're getting a bit too antsy. We can't wait around." So they went to do a film, and there you are. Then you lose a bit of contact, don't you? So does. Yeah. But I mean, I've got no regrets. I mean, you make those choices. You have to.
Mm.
Yeah, you have to. It's you can't be available all the time for everybody.
No,
and they're not going to be always available for you.
And I think it's also nice after so many years working with them, that sometimes you get a little bit into a kind of
rut.
I was going to say rut, but it's more like it all becomes a little bit too comfortable. I've always liked being challenged, and their work is always challenging, or usually challenging because it's always so different. But there comes a point, having done however many I did with them, 11 or so, that maybe it's not anymore. And I like working with different people. So, yeah. I mean, it was wonderful then to tie up with Denis, who's very very different person in terms of the films he's trying to make and his approach to life, really. So, it's kind of refreshing to have that opportunity, really.
Accidents like the wrong printer lights, which you read, you specifically said in one of the films that they used the wrong printer lights because the colorist or the printer guy at the time for the dailies said that it was written as candlelight, and so
yeah, sometimes when you don't have a close enough relationship with your dailies timer. This is when shooting film, and this was a long time ago. I did a film with Bob Rafelson, the wonderful director of 5 Easy Pieces, amongst many others, King of Marvin Gardens. Wonderful director. And I was so nervous. One of the early scenes we did, a number of scenes we did, they were all candlelit in these very Victorian sets. Wonderful costumes, the whole bit. And I didn't know, forget the lab we were using, I didn't know the dailies timer very well. And I just wrote on the sheets, this is candlelight. And the next day we're sitting in dailies.
You probably wrote print for candlelight.
Yeah, print for candlelight. Yeah. And it was only a few days into the shoot, and we were sitting in dailies, and these dailies came up, and they were almost black, and all you could see was the flame of the candle. And
printed for the
and
candlelight.
I looked at he printed for candle. But I looked at the lab timing sheet, and the lights were like 45, 46 when they should have been like 29, 33, which is where I was usually printing. Yeah. So I went out. I said to Bob, who was sitting next to her, I said, "This is all. I can't watch this. This is being printed wrong. I'm sure the neg's all right." And I went out and called the lab, and I said, "Yeah, what is this? It's black. It's almost black." He said, "Well, I just read the sheet. It said print for candlelight, so I printed for the flame." I thought, why would you do that? But anyway.
Why would the scene be about that?
But it was frightening, and so. But the next day, the reprint came back, and everybody was very happy. Me,
and also, it's
very relieved.
It's even more scary when you're far away. For some reason,
On that same shoot, it's funny. I say in the book, we were out in the middle of Kenya, and we were watching dailies on a little set. VHS dailies from about a week previously. And Bob came over and said, "There's a call. The studio's on the line to talk to you." And
that's never
my
good.
God. I went to the radio room, and I said, "Yeah, this is Roger Deakins." And the guy said, "Your dailies, Deakins, your dailies. Too yellow, too yellow." He was really abrupt. I went, "No, I don't know. I hadn't seen those dailies because they were already like a couple of days old and they hadn't reached us." So I thought, and I said, "Oh, where are you watching them?" He said, "I'm in the back of my car on the PCH, and they're too yellow." And then I forget what I said. Then I think I made a little crackling on the line, and I put it down, pretending that it'd gone off. And I thought, and I went back to sit down by the fire next to Bob, and he just looked up and he said, "Hollywood." That was very funny.
That is a frustrating, ridiculous situation.
It was just funny. I mean, at the time, you're kind of, by then I kind of got to know Bob well enough that it was okay. But, you still get very nervous at those sort of things. Yeah.
Sure. And now with digital dailies, how's that? Have you run into any difficulties like that again, or is it pretty much more controllable?
Well,
do you do anything to assure that?
I always take a light reading with my meter.
Yeah, and we do time the dailies, and then we always have a calibrated way of watching it, but then the rest of the group is always watching streaming dailies, and the colors are so different and all of that. And we had a second unit shooting one time, and I had gotten stills for them to reference and everything, and they were way off, and they said, well, in the streaming version that we're using, it's not yellow. And I said, but you're not supposed to be using the streaming because it's so off sometimes on color. It's great for performance and all of that, but you just
But we had one incident on it was on Skyfall. I say it was when we were doing the big glass office building and all the projections and which is all in camera. And I had lit that on more than a pre-light day. I'd been lighting it for about a week as the set was being built, and I putting things on, and I was always taking readings, and I knew I was right on the edge. And the glass was really thick. I mean, it was like 1/4-inch glass, so because it had to sustain its own weight standing up. I mean, I had to sit alone. There was no structure with it at all. It was all just glass. And so you lost a lot of light between the different panes of glass. So I'm taking these readings, and the monitor was really bright, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And the DIT's monitor, Josh's monitor, was really bright. And he said, no, it's all been checked and adjusted. And I said, something's wrong here, because my meter is telling me one thing on the lens and the monitor is telling me I'm overexposing. And luckily, I stuck with a meter, because later on they checked, didn't they?
All during that week, because you were doing nights, actually, and I was doing days, but you would come in and say, the monitor's off. And I talked to Josh, I talked to the guys, they kept saying, no, it's not. And you were in quite a state by the time Friday came.
Because they kept saying it, yeah.
So I came on set and I talked to them, and they had all these technical people around and the guys from the lab, and they were a little condescending to me and going, no, James, the scope says this and that. And I said, I'm sorry, guys, but I'm a tech person too, but between the scope and Roger's eye, I'll go with Roger's eye. Mm-hmm. You have to check again. And they were so condescending. And then they came to me and they said, there was a hidden file that we didn't think to look for, and it's not there because it was part of what they needed to translate it to the monitor. And they were like really nervous. We're going to get fired. I said, it's fine. It's great that we know what it is. We'll just swap it out. But they learned from that day to trust Roger's eye.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing could have been underexposed, and to underexpose a scene like that, which is already very dark and got a lot of black in it. And so it would have had less snap, it would have had less color. It would have just been kind of a sad situation. So I actually did trust my eye on my meter, and just shot the way I thought it would be. I mean, often I just do it through the lens and adjust the iris as what I'm looking at. So.
But it's a bit disturbing nowadays when everybody puts so much faith in technology, and all technology is telling you you're wrong. You kind of go, am I? Because you're tired at that point. You're going, really? Yeah. No, but I'm sure. And luckily you stuck to your guns.
Yeah. But also with the digital eyepiece now, the brightness can be set differently. The contrast, so many variables that it really shows, as you said, the technology is great, but you cannot completely rely on it. Like we just saw last week, AWS went down and half of the internet was gone and people couldn't do anything. The airports were shut down because the technology failed. It can be great, but it's also something not to rely too much on.
I think I'm right in saying on that, though, didn't we have the
We had the Alexa, with a
viewfinder. Studio, with the viewfinder, which was not very bright, but at least it was a regular viewfinder. Of course, that's not a possibility now because cameras are so miniaturized that there's no way you can make a revolving shutter and have a optical viewfinder. But
it's not financially smart for companies because
no.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. In theory, on page 89, you said good use of multiple cameras, but you prefer every scene to have a specific visual perspective rather than a series of random shots. You mentioned that on Air America, there was an unknown action unit that they slipped in on you that you weren't even aware of?
Yeah, there was a second unit had been working for weeks before I was aware.
That's pretty unusual, isn't that?
By viewing dailies that you didn't recognize.
Yeah. First time I was watching dailies, realizing I hadn't shot them. I'd done Mountains of the Moon with Bob Rafelson, and the producer on that was Dan Melnick. And I thought at one point Bob Rafelson was going to do Air America. I think he was thinking of doing it with Dan Melnick before Mountains of the Moon, because I kind of heard about the project. But after Mountains of the Moon, I'd got on with Dan very well. And so Dan asked me to come aboard Air America, but it wasn't Bob directing, it was Roger Spottiswoode. So I very much wasn't Roger's choice. And also, Roger didn't like the fact that I operate the camera. So it was a bad combination. For whatever reason, there was a big second unit working that I was not told about. I wasn't aware of. Yeah, which was kind of disappointing to say the least when you think you're the cinematographer.
It also seems very odd that they would do that. But maybe it was, they did it for their schedule and whatever else.
But what you should go back to what you said about specific shots, that every specific visual perspective rather than a series of random shots, which goes back to why you like to, and I totally appreciate it, operate the camera, because it's true that framing, for me, it's always from the first frame to the last frame in a shot, it's a series of still images, and you want each one to be framed perfectly and knowing what it's going to transfer or transition to the next shot, it's scene, and so to be in control of all that.
Doesn't happen that often to the mere mortals in the film business, because we don't usually get to operate if we're the DP, because unless it's sometimes you can on a really big picture, but on most of the smaller ones now, you have to ask permission to do it. Would you ever do one where you weren't operating?
No, I tried doing it once, and I don't know if I was fired or I quit. I can't remember now, one or the other. Probably a bit of both. No, I can't work like that. And it's put me out of a number of jobs that I probably would have liked to have done, but I just realized I can't work like that.
Yeah.
It's different when you're working with an operator who's operating Steadicam or a particular drone or something. But no, I like to be the one behind the camera. Yeah.
But it's also nice when you work like you did with Cavacciuti, when you work with a Steadicam operator, and like I have with McConkey, is that you work multiple films with the same operator.
Yeah.
And so there's a continuity, there's an understanding of what the taste and what the look should be.
Right. Yeah, and Pete Cavacciuti you mentioned, he was on 1917. But he was also on the Eric Clapton video. And what was that, 1982 or something? I don't know. So yeah, I've known him a very long time.
Yeah, I did one movie with him. He was great. So I don't know if you want to talk about this, but getting fired. You mentioned 2 films that you were fired from after Shawshank.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to mention them and what the reasons were that you got fired.
I don't want to mention anything more than it's in the book, but as I say in the book, there's many reasons somebody can be fired. Maybe the cinematographer is not any good. I would hate to think that was the case in my case, but I'm not sure. You never know. But I mean, sometimes you're not the director's choice in the first place. An actress might be kind of doing it just for her own power play, I suppose. I'd say that. I don't know. There's so many reasons.
I think it's important for people to know that it's not the end of the world.
Right.
When this was going on, we ran into Connie Hall, and he said, "Twice? You're nobody in Hollywood until you're fired 3 times."
Yeah. So
it's great. You wouldn't imagine Connie ever getting fired,
but he did.
Yeah, he did. No, it's really uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable. But I've also left movies, and that's really uncomfortable too. But in the end, you know, if you and the director don't see eye to eye and it's not working out, then you might as well leave. If you're not feeling satisfied with what you're doing, you have to live with that. So I've never, like I say in the book, it's not. I love film. I love my job as a cinematographer, but it's not the be-all or end-all in the end, you know?
I actually think that's kind of important, too, because if you're going to be able to create a look, you kind of have to have experience of different things to put into that. You know, if you've only had one kind of life, your work will be one kind of work.
That. I mean, I never came to cinematography until I was quite old by the time I started shooting feature films, and like we were talking about documentaries, I'd seen a bit of life by then, you know.
Yeah, I think it's that's what I was saying earlier. The documentary and the other, you know, art school and all of that, it informs you into a greater world than just, you know, being that one thing that you know.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to impress with the book. I mean, I got to say, I never thought about writing a book. Let's get this straight. It was we were approached by a publisher to write a book, and I don't know if they wanted a tell-all book or what. I don't know why I was approached. It was maybe because we'd done this photo book called Byways during the pandemic. James had managed to find a publisher, along with our agents' help, find a publisher. So we published this photo book, which was quite successful. And so whether this publisher said, well, why don't you do a book on cinematography? I don't know. Whatever it was kind of an opportunity. And then we thought about it. Why not? You know, an opportunity. But I wanted the book to be very honest about how like on a podcast, how did you start out? How did you actually become a cinematographer, and why? What are your feelings? I wanted to be quite honest about it. And, you know, so I had very bad moments in my career, and I've had really high moments. But as Benicio del Toro said, you know, it's like surfing. You have big highs, and then you're at the bottom of the wave, and you have big lows.
It also fits in with everything else we do with the podcast and the website.
Yeah,
is, you know, sharing knowledge.
A great
Why
chance to share whatever, you know. So as I say, a publisher wanted to do it, and it's been a bit of work, but it's been quite, yeah.
I'm very happy that publisher wanted to do it, because it truly is a wonderful book. The insights and everything in there. I mean, I have so many things I'd want to ask you from reading the book, wanting to know more and more and understand things.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? You know, yourself, you've done so many things, you had so many experiences, then you've got to whittle it down. I mean, it's quite a big book. I mean, it's like 401 pages or something, but it could have easily been twice that. And I mean, I have more. Yeah, no, I got more diagrams. I got so many more stories about life, and I say, but that's even without going to the ones I don't want to say, which is the tell-all, the Hollywood tell-all.
Talking about technology, I want to talk about that. The whole thing with shooting on a volume now instead of a real background, like driving shots or other things. I mean, almost everything I watch that has driving shots that's shot with a volume or some sort of LED screen, it's obvious. It just doesn't look right. Would you shoot on a volume? Have you had to do that?
It's funny because, Joel and we're working with Joel and Ethan, often we say, oh, well, let's just do this in a studio. We'll just do, poor man's process. So usually it was night work, and I'd done some like that with Denis Villeneuve as well. So it's not even as kind of intricate as a volume. It's just putting up a few lights on a dolly and tracking them past the car window to make it look like we're actually outside at night.
Somewhere. Right.
Yeah, or the scene we did in a car on The Man Who Wasn't There, which I mentioned in the book. It was a daylight scene, and we shot plates but shot the actors on stage and matched the sunlight through the trees with the big revolving kind of a branch on a revolving pivot and a light in the middle to make it look like the sunlight was going through the trees. And Mitch and the Grips timed it to a playback they had in front of them of the plate, So, I mean, it's very funny things you do. But so the volume is just actually an extension of that, not going on location and having to shoot a night shoot riding down Ventura Boulevard, which we did on the Big Lebowski, which is kind of like difficult. But yeah, I think it's kind of overused. But like you come at a thing of your own time, and I mean, the first few films I did, everything was in camera. Like 1984, everything is in camera, whether it's on a train or it's a night shoot with these huge telescreens around. We did everything in camera. Of course, nowadays that would not be in camera. That would be effects, or some of the scenes on the train would definitely be the volume. Why would you be in an old period train traveling across somewhere in wherever we were in Essex, which is the only train line you can go on, right, with the carriages that look like they were out of this world of 1948, 1984. No, you would do it on stage. Of course you would. But, you're part of the world you come into, and and I kind of love doing things real, but then maybe that's just, again, because I spent so many years doing documentaries and just loving the experience of relating to something very real in front of me,
And do you think it also helps the actors, though, to be in a situation where they actually see and feel what's around them?
No, I mean, that's interesting, really, because I don't know. It depends on that, doesn't it? Because we were just talking to somebody, and actually we were approached about a film the other day that would shoot in the Arctic. And you go, or the Antarctic, I think. And you go, well, what would be the best way of doing it? Do you really take the actors to the middle of the Antarctic and have them wandering through the snow and falling into the water and the ice? And then you think, well, when Eisenstein did the battle on the ice floes, he did it like on a backlot with big polystyrene blocks of ice. So, you've got to find a way that looks right, but it's also allows the actors to do the bit and everybody else to do the bit. If you took a whole crew to Antarctica, well, you wouldn't. You would take a few people, but then you're restricted on what you can do because you only have a few people. So it's all a balance, isn't it? I mean, I think it's wonderful today, the possibilities in technology. I mean, it's wonderful that a guy can sit at his home computer and use AI to create a story completely by himself. I think that's wonderful if it's used to tell a story that's worth telling.
And it gives an opportunity to somebody to
express themselves.
Yes, yes. I think it's just
to take over.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. It's just another opportunity in another direction.
Tool.
Yeah, another tool. Yeah.
And so, when talking about Skyfall, you questioned. Because I hear it all the time, similar things. What does filmic mean? Like I also hear, what is cinematic?
Yeah, I always find that funny. I don't know. Yeah.
Is there an answer?
I've no idea. You watch an Ozu film and the camera never moves, but it feels filmic to me. But so and then you look at Red Badge of Courage, where the camera's moving all over the battlefield, which was one of the first times the long tracking shots were ever done.
The original.
Yeah.
Oh, Red Badge of Courage.
The Red Badge of Courage, John Huston.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of wonderful. But that's not only filmic; it can be a static frame, can't it?
Does filmic mean grain?
I think film it means to me it's about the story. If the story's worth telling and it's engaging, then it's filmic.
That's true. Yeah.
I don't know. Grain, I don't know. I used to love grain, but I don't think it really matters how many people actually see grain of an audience. How many people in an audience can see a difference in lens? How many people in an audience can see a difference between the straight 35 and anamorphic? I don't know. And
there are a lot of really experienced people that will look at a film and say, oh, that was shot on film, but it was shot on digital or vice versa. So
we know people who work in the industry that swear Skyfall was shot on film. Okay?
Yeah. I've been in a situation like that with a producer who insisted films were shot on film and they were shot on Alexa.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
Oh, compare the process with CG enhancement to like between 1984, where you say everything was done in camera, on set, etc., to the dark future movies like Blade Runner 2049, where a lot of it was done practically, but there's also a lot of enhancement.
Yeah, as I say, 1984 was all in camera. There's not a single effect shot in it. There's even a glass shot in it, which is a combination of a hand painting on a piece of glass in front of the actual shot. But Blade Runner, Denny and I and Dennis, the production designer, were very keen to do as much as possible in camera. So, I mean, there are shots in it, obviously, with the spinner flying over the seawall in the city. Obviously, most of that is CG. But we did, for instance, shoot plates in Mexico City when it was a very cloudy, rainy, dull day to put in as background. So there's always some reference to reality. And we did as much as we could, even to the extreme of there's a whole sequence in a sort of rubbish dump kind of place with these great big towering rusting hulks, which was kind of based on one of these places in India where they take old ships apart and scrap old ships. But most of that was built in a backlot, and there was very little needed to be added, just some extensions, CG-wise to give it a little more depth. But yeah, we tried to do as much as possible in camera.
Great. Well, so when in reading the book, among everything that totally engaged me, the epilogue for me is the crux of everything. It's where we talk about choices, people, and directors. You wouldn't want to be on a film where you were just pushing a button.
No.
And collaborating with the gaffer and the key grip and the camera crew.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate any on that? Is how important is that to you, and how does it work through your career?
Well, it's been very important because it's been like for both of us since we've been together. It's been like our family, It's I mean, I don't have a big family, but it's not really about that. But it's about relating to people and working with your friends, and it's so nice to experience things together. I mean, I had that obviously a little bit in documentaries, working with a much smaller team. But on features, you have people that you work with. Andy Harris, I was working with for 35 years. As my first assistant or focus puller, and you have these experiences together, like you do as a married couple in a team, like we are. That means an enormous amount. But
well, and also it's not an easy job. No matter how great the story is or whatever, you still, it's hard to do. And so it's great.
It's hard to do if you put the pressure on yourself, because you're always trying to, I'm always trying to please myself, not somebody else. Mm-hmm. You know, and as I said in the book, I don't really care about all the, the hoopla about films and your own work. Yeah.
You want to be proud of what you do.
I do, but I know what I've done, and it's my own relationship to it. I know what I could have done better, like I was mentioning the scenes in Sid and Nancy. I felt overlit, and the ones I thought were actually, I was quite proud of. Proud, probably the wrong word, but you know what I mean. So there's certain things that people kind of rave about. I know I could have done much better that disappoint me, and there's other things that people never notice that I'm really kind of pleased with, like for the most part, Jarhead being one. I think it's some of the most interesting, challenging work I've ever done. But the film was sort of passed over, but that's how it goes.
Yeah. You can't please everybody.
No, but as I say in the end of the book, I'm really in many ways, I'm still a country boy, and I come from a little seaside town, and I grew up amongst these people that went fishing. And one day I went back and I was waiting to pick up some bait in Teignmouth, where I was to collect little live sand eels to use as bait. And one of the guys in the queue said, it's in the book, he said, you were robbed. I didn't even know he was talking to me. And I looked around. He said, yeah, you were robbed. He said, Jesse James, yeah, should have won.
Which is amazing.
I thought it was the most
somebody in Devon would know that movie.
That was the most wonderful moment that I shall never forget. I didn't know the guy. We had a mutual friend that went fishing, but I didn't know him. He knew who I was from seeing my picture in the local newspaper, I think. And then when he said, yeah, Jesse James, you were robbed. Oh, it's really so sweet.
You mentioned about modern technology, and you'd said about turning 2D stills into 3D images and neural radiance fields, AI. The future is here and moving fast. How do you see movie making moving forward into the new mid-century? And I love mid-century architecture, but the last mid-century.
Yeah, but I mentioned it briefly just now, talking about, the thing about that, the still photographs, we were on Skyfall, and first off, we were going to send a first unit. Either we were going to go to this island off southern Japan, which it used to be it was an ex-coal mine, and it's a wonderful looking island. And a location scout had gone there, Hashima Island it's called. A location scout had gone there and taken a few stills. And we were looking at these, we got to go there. We got to establish our actors on this island before we then shoot on set or on the backlot in Pinewood. And they reckon the budget was like huge. So then it went down to, a second unit's going to go with the actors. Then, how are we going to get the actors away? And then, there's so much pollution there. What are we going to do? And so I talked to Steve Begg, our effects supervisor who was working on Skyfall. And I said, these still photographs are really good. We only need like 2 or 3 establishing shots of our characters walking through this city. Can you take them and use them as plates? And we'll shoot the actors, like to fit into the plate. And he said, yeah, I can do that. He did a little sample, and we went to Sam Mendes to show him what could be done. And I think they probably saved $250,000. We just did it like that with these location photographs. That is a case of really using what was then cutting edge technology to save money and open up the possibilities for
and not be the worse for it.
Right, and not be the worse for it, but actually it was creatively really a good way of doing it. I think that with any technology, I think when Steadicam first came out, a lot of people started wandering around with it, like this one particular director, trying to find a shot, as though it was the be-all and end-all. But I just, it was so overused for a while. And then you see a film like Come and See, where it's used for really specific effect to shoot very specific shots. Then you go, yeah, that's a great tool. But things can be overused, can't they? It's great to have all these tools in the toolbox, but it can be overused, and it can be a gimmick,
Yeah, and what you said about the photographs, I've been getting a lot into Gaussian splats and LiDAR scans, and that's taken it another step beyond.
Right, right.
Photogrammetry, where you can then use those as backgrounds, and as even if you shoot on a set, you can record the set afterwards when it's lit the way you wanted it to be,
right.
press, and record it for if they have to go back and do pickup shots or something.
Right.
So it's using the tools the right way.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, it's fantastic. But there's a big part of me still says that, because of my history, I kind of love being in the real world, reacting to something in front of me, like I'm actually shooting a documentary. That's where I get my most satisfaction from, that kind of situation. Preferably, even on a feature film, being on a location somewhere, even if it's a set built on location, like when we did Kundun in Morocco. I just love that whole experience, being with a group of people making a film together in a realistic world of some sort,
Yeah, I can't imagine how it would have been to do something like Mandalorian, where you're on a volume for the entire show.
Yeah.
The actors. And I did an offset. I did a film with Ewan McGregor right after he did his Star Wars, and that Star Wars was all green screen.
Oh yeah.
And he didn't want to do any. He says, "I can't do it. I can't do a single green screen because there's no relation to what I'm doing."
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
You want to be like I appreciate. You want to be operating the camera because you react to the actors.
Yeah, reactors and maybe the natural light or certain things happen, those happy accidents, as Connie Hall used to say, things happen that you react to that you could never imagine when you're sitting doing a storyboard or drawing a set.
Yeah, and storyboards, I've seen them as, I think you've mentioned, that it's a guide. It's an idea.
Yeah.
And then when you get on set, you live and you use it as a guidebook.
Yeah.
So you mentioned on page 371, and I looked it up, and it's a very complicated thing trying to figure it out. Occam's razor.
Yes.
Can you illuminate me on it? What is Occam's razor?
It's usually the simplest answer to any problem is usually the best.
Okay.
Well, that makes it sound simple.
The basics is Occam's razor is just the simplest, most obvious answer is usually the solution.
Okay, and that's a good thing to remember. Trying to figure out what to shoot.
I think so. It's like, how many times have you been there and you have this instinctive reaction to something, you think, I'll do that. And then you sort of like you're thinking about it overnight or something and you come up, oh, that's a really interesting idea. But it's like the last idea is always the best, and you forget that maybe your first simplest reaction was maybe the best, but who knows?
I think it's gut instinct.
Yeah.
Most of the times when I have a gut instinct about what to do, and then I overthink it, and I do something else, and I go, I should have just listened to my gut instinct because it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It's funny, and seeing what you've done and your memories and your incredible descriptions of what you remembered from the times and what you've been through, that it really informs who you are as a person. And it's something to be happy and proud, not in a bad way.
Yeah.
To be glad that you're able to live this experience.
Yeah.
And you as a master, Sir Roger, I should have introduced you that way. That you're able to bring such beauty and honesty in what you've shot to the public who watches it. whether it's, a film critic or it's the guy who was at the fishing dock with you, who understands. And people, I think, people, they look at a movie and they say, it was shot digital, shot film. I can't tell between a 35 or a 50, or I don't know that. But there's something on a good film done well that the person just understands. And I think that's something that you've been like a great contributor to our world in providing that.
Well, thank you for saying that.
Thank you.
I mean, for me, it's like the book was interesting because it is like going back in time and revisiting memories. But as I said to you earlier, most of it is from memory. And yeah, I've got so many memories. And, even good and bad. I mean, one of the early documentaries was like, sailing around the world. That's not the easiest thing to do. And there was some really kind of tough moments. But now, that memory is like, it's absolutely etched, totally etched on my mind in a kind of wonderful way.
You mentioned fear of heights.
Yes.
And I have fear of heights too.
Yeah.
I've been shot many times from a helicopter and from high places, but I think, and you mentioned it, with your eyes on the eyepiece.
Yeah.
It's a different reality. It's like you're watching a movie or something.
Right. Felix, I'm flying in a helicopter, hanging on the outside with some piping and stuff. I found that really exhilarating, but I can't stand heights. I stand on a top of a cliff top in England when I go for a run, and I go, oh no, I don't like that. But
you're looking for the camera. It's funny to put yourself into that
frame.
That frame.
It's interesting. I think it's part of the fact that you're becoming an observer of the world when you have the camera with you. You have a slight distance from reality because you're sort of studying it in that way. Whereas when you're standing on a cliff top, it's just you and the wind and a cliff top. No.
And that distance, that removal that you have is important in doing documentaries, because you're not supposed to be influencing what's going on. You're observing it.
Right.
You're very, very objective.
Right. Which I think is an interesting discussion that we've had with Matt Hyman about documentaries, that I don't think you can completely ignore the fact that you are, by being there, having an influence on the events that are happening in front of you. It's rather like particle physics. You can't actually stand outside of it, be an observer. There's no such thing. So I think, at my end of my time shooting documentaries, I did a film with a friend, John Saunders, and we started talking from behind the camera or the microphone, because John was doing sound as well. And we found that was kind of we both do, wish we'd extended that kind of filmmaking, because I don't see enough of it really, where the filmmaker is being honest about their presence, but also honest about their own perspective on the subject. But
would that come in a voiceover afterwards, in narration?
It wouldn't be the same, because you're actually reacting to the subject. We were making a film in a mental hospital, and we were talking to the patients while we were filming and asking them about their lives and thoughts. And so that kind of thing, I think, is I would have been really interested to have explored that idea a bit more,
Yeah, because I know in documentaries also, once you have an editor, it's changing. It's not completely objective anymore.
Right.
Because it's choosing what to put in, what to show to the public.
Yeah, well, it's like Fred Wiseman said. Basically, he's creating fiction, but he's creating fiction that has a truth to what the situation he was portraying, But he doesn't pretend for a moment that it's real life directly.
Interesting. Yeah. Do you ever feel like that when you're shooting a narrative fiction, that you're telling a true story in a sense?
Yeah, I hope we always are, really. I mean, I'm only drawn to those kind of movies that are in some way connected to real life, our own society and human problems. And
well, even Blade Runner was
Yeah.
the guy wanting to be human.
the nature of
Yeah.
being human,
Yeah.
what it means to be human. So I think it's important that there is a certain truth in what you do. Yeah, absolutely, like that.
I think it's interesting to try to come to it with that attitude, with that mindset.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to read your next book, Volume 2.
I
think we need a break here.
I do another book.
You have one, after New Year's. You can start
Thanks.
Yeah.
give yourself a couple of months.
I'm trying to maybe photography, a book on my photographs, but we'll see.
Yeah. Thank you for doing this.
Was great. Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure.